Welcome to Tales of the Ultimate Sportsman. We'll start off today with 3 short stories from ultimate sportsmen and women from around the world. This one's called Day of the Bats by John Hedin from Sturgeon Lake, Minnesota. In August 1995, my good friend Rick and I were camping and fishing in a remote spot near Virginia, Minnesota. This is a great area surrounded by tall old pine trees and a 200-acre lake. The only way in is through 2 mud holes, each about 100 feet long and 2 feet deep. And that's if it's been an average rainfall that year. We definitely needed a 4-wheel drive to get to the camping spot. But remember, the more times in and out, the deeper those holes get. Fortunately, it's sand underneath and a well-kept secret. So anyways, we're out in the duck boat and the lake's like glass and we're catching ass and sunnies. Nice big ones, and a lot of them too. Just then I looked across the lake and it looked like a flock of Tweety birds were coming over the trees right at us. Hundreds of them, and as they got closer, they didn't look like Tweeties anymore. They looked like bats, and they were heading right for us. I froze. I don't like bats. I never did. Not since I accidentally grabbed one in my friend's treehouse 30 years ago. I never want to do that again. When they got to the boat, they circled and swooped and dove right at us, probably eating the mosquitoes and flies that were riding along with us. The noise was deafening. A noise that sounded like 1,000 pages going off at the same time. Rick tried to swat at them with his fishing rod, which only confused them into flying into us, bouncing off of us and each other. They stayed for probably 5 minutes, but it seemed a lot longer. And then they were gone, the cloud disappeared. I looked at Rick, he looked at me, still frozen. Then he laughed and threw his frog to the edge of the lily pads.
Our next story is The Gray Jay Terror by Jeffery Ross. Pueblo, Colorado. This adventure took place on High Mesa while on an elk hunt in central Colorado. There were 3 of us in the hunting party, Pete, Rob, and myself. We had been hunting hard for a couple of days, but all we managed to see were cows, and none of us had a cow tag. On the 3rd day, we were on stand by 4:30 a.m., and very tired from the previous day's hunting. Rob was at the base of a ridge and Pete and I moved around the ridge to see if we could get anything moving. We finally reached Rob at about 11 a.m. None of us had seen anything, so we decided to bag it for the day. We went back to camp to grab some lunch and check our maps to look for places in the area that we had not hunted. After lunch, Rob and Pete decided that it was time for a snooze. I decided that I just wanted to sit around for a while and look at the maps for the next day's hunt. I was eating a sandwich and looking at some new areas when I noticed a gray jay hanging around. It got closer and closer to me every time it landed. Pretty soon, I was more interested in watching this brave little bird and started setting out breadcrumbs to see how close he would come to me. After about 10 minutes, the bird was near my feet. About that time, a devious plan began to form in my head. I started putting the breadcrumbs on my legs, and the bird would actually land on me and eat the bread. I gradually put the bread close enough to where I could reach out and grab the bird. Finally, I got the bird to land on my groin area and my hands were ready. I made a quick grab and the bird was mine. By this time, I could hardly contain myself because of what was coming next. I walked over to the tent where the guys were sleeping and released the bird inside. The bird was squawking and going nuts in the tent where my victims were sleeping. I heard shouts from inside the tent, and it looked like a giant super ball was bouncing around inside as Rob and Pete were trying to figure out what was going on and what was the quickest way out of the tent. By now, I was on the ground busting a gut because of what was going on in the tent.
Our next story is about fishing for Flatheads by Robby Robinson from Ohio. My partner Don Wise and I set up for another night of catfishing. We arranged equipment, and prepare to get comfortable. 20-pound cats are scarce in Ohio, and our plan to catch 30-pound flatheads often meant a long wait. We had had some success so far catching 30 and 40-pound cats. Sometimes we got as many as 2 fish a night. Often we sat waiting with no bites during the night. Our big rods were set out with 7-inch goldfish for bait. The level winds were out of gear and the clickers on. Don's baitrunner was set to the baitrunner mode. 2 big nets were standing propped to a tree, ready if we should need them. When everything was set and all the drags had been checked, Don announced it was beer 30. We popped tops on the icy cold beverages and listened for the reels while discussing other fishing sites and other baits and techniques. Our discussion stopped with the buzz of a clicker. We located the rod in the dark, and Don slipped the clicker off. He put his thumb on the spool gently. I have been through this procedure many times before, so I was careful not to stand behind my friend. Feeling the line spooling steadily off the reel, Don put the big pin into gear, let the line tighten, then whipped the rod back. The hook sunk into the catfish, and the rod bowed. As Don fought the fish and I got the net ready, Don let it into the net, and I lifted it by the hoop. We have bent the handles on many nets trying to lift big cats by the handles, and I didn't want this one to become a casualty. We took the big flathead up the bank and removed the hook. Don produced a rope, and we tied the fish to his boat, the shovelhead special. We celebrated with another icy cold beverage. Don commented that it was early and we had a good chance to get another fish before the night was over. We sat and talked for a while. We munched some snacks. Fishing all night means sleeping some through the day, so we ate when it was convenient. After a couple of hours, we heard the buzz of Don's big baitrunner paying outline. Don picked up the rod and tucked the butt into his stomach. I heard the click as he put it in gear. He leaned back and the big spinning rod bent. There was braided line on the reel, and I could hear the sizzle of the line on the guides as the fish took line. Don kept pressure on the fish and soon started working it in. As he neared the bank, I laid the big net in front of Don. When the big head came over, I again lifted it by the hoop. As I carried the fish up the bank, both the fish and Don were gasping for breath. I tenderly removed the hook from the cat. The cat did not understand my good intentions and promptly clamped down on my arm. This was not the first flathead to remove some hide from me, but I complained nevertheless. My complaint was cut short by the buzz of another level wind. Don already had the rod and slipped off the clicker. There was some hesitation since the catfish did not move. After about a minute and a half, he began swimming steadily away. Don put the pen in gear and crossed his eyes. For the second time in 5 minutes, Don was connected to a big flathead. He fought the fish, giving me running commentary when the fish took line or ran left or right. When he was ready, I grabbed the other net and Don led him into it. I carried the fish up the bank and we hooped. This was the first time I had actually needed 2 nets. We were unprepared for 3 big flatheads. Don cut some of his anchor ropes to tie up the 2 fish on the bank. After tying them off on his boat, we had another icy cold beverage to celebrate. Don got another big goldfish and baited the spinning rod. He carefully lobbed it back out into the lake. We were celebrating our success and guessing the weight of the fish. We were discussing the virtues of our choice of fishing spots when another clicker signaled a bite. I picked up my rod and slipped the clicker off. With my thumb on the spool, I could feel the fish move just a little. It took a little more line and stopped. I waited, and after a bit, I could feel the spool turning smoothly as the flathead swam away. I locked the pen into gear and whipped the rod back. I felt the big rod load up with the weight of the catfish. This one fought straight out, and I put pressure on him. Don grabbed a net and waited till I led the flathead into it. We took the big cat up the bank and removed the hook. Don remarked that I would owe him some rope as we tied the cat to the boat. I laid the rod and reeled down. Although I could cast the big pin, I knew the goldfish would not survive the cast, and flatheads want live baits. As we celebrated with another icy cold beverage, Don asked me what were the most and the biggest flatheads I had heard of caught in one night. I reminded him of a picture of a guy with 5 flatheads hanging on the marina wall. It was dated in the 1960s. Maybe 2 hours later, I heard the buzz of my other pen. I got up and hooked the fish. While fighting the fish, I noticed that my partner was still laying on his chaise lounge. I worked my way along the bank and grabbed the net. I worked the flathead into the net and took it up the bank. I roped the fish to Don's boat and settled back. The picture shows Robby Robinson left, Don Wise Jr. center, and our friend Hans Rydell right. Soon after the picture was taken, the flatheads were released to grow, spawn, and fight again.